Okay, so here we are for first session, starting all over again. And it's been advertised throughout the community, and a number of people have kind of infiltrated to other areas. It seems like we've had upwards of, I don't know, 40, almost 50 people sometimes coming. Yes. During the pandemic time. And maybe people are so engaged with issues outside the Zoom room that they're not kind of chomping at the bit to come on here at night. But it was a lovely day today. So, is there anybody who's new to these classes? Like, it's the very first time. I'm going to kind of check the gallery here and see if there's anybody who's new. I see a GYBE, and maybe you've been to other classes before, but just kind of curious if you're new and if you how you found out about the classes. I don't want to scare you off either, but if you know how to unmute, you can just push the unmute and say hello. All right. While you're thinking about it, perhaps I think Patricia, you've been here before, yeah? Enough. And Jerry, you've been here many times. Marcia too, and Edward, and Sarah and Faye and Dave and Karen, and it just seems like we have a group of people who've been here before quite a bit. Anybody have anything to say about your relatives saying there's no way we're going to do classes like that or what have you?
I heard why a new reason why not to do this. Too much fat and not enough protein.
Oh, someone told you that?
Yes.
Someone told you that what we're
Yeah.
teaching is
But
you're getting too much fat and not enough protein?
yeah, that's why they won't do. But yet, I put out a flyer today at the gym
Yeah.
down here at any time, and she took one, and she goes, "Oh, you vegan or vegetarian?" I go, "Well, whole food." And she goes, I don't do that because it's too much fat and not enough protein. But yeah, she's all into. She doesn't go for dairy and stuff, and it's like she kind of contradicted herself, I think.
Well, it's usually too little. People usually complain of too little fat, not too much fat. It's usually it's too little fat and too little protein. That's why usually
Yeah.
people say because a whole food plant-based diet's only about 10 to 15% fat and about 10 to 15% protein and then the rest carbohydrate. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But I put out that Vegan Fest flyer, and
Oh,
she
good.
took one. Yeah. So, and I have a question for Kim, if that's okay.
Sure.
So she's in California. Have you heard of the Stanford Vegan Farm?
No. The one that's in Mendocino?
Yes.
No, it's super expensive. And I've heard really great things about it, but no, Chef AJ was doing a course maybe a few weeks ago or something, and I checked into it, and I'm like, you can stay in the town of Mendocino and do the class, but staying at the Stanford Inn is really expensive. So I'd rather do this and have, couple of weeks than that. But it's supposed to be fabulous. It's supposed to be gorgeous and wonderful food. but it's expensive.
I bet. Okay. That was all.
What class is that? That's expensive?
No, the class isn't so expensive. The class was reasonable. It was a weekend with Chef AJ and their chef up there. And it
Oh,
was only like $200. So I thought, what? The Stanford Inn for $200? Because I thought it included everything. I mean, it was maybe it was 275. Was it, Marcia? Something like that. And so I looked into it thinking, wow, that's a deal. But then that wasn't including accommodation.
I don't remember.
I
So,
see. Okay.
I know they got one coming up.
oh, maybe that's the one that's coming up.
Oh,
Yeah, she does a thing there. Yeah.
Well, this option is a whole lot less expensive than those options, yeah?
yeah. And it's gonna be with the camera.
All right. So this option has the Zoom option, but of course, if you're living in this area, there are some in-person options in Springfield and in Santa Clara at the Grange and the Y intermittently and Campbell Community Center and Willamette Lane. So there's many, many options in this area. And we hope that will continue to expand. Maybe because we have so many options, there aren't quite as many people who are logging on to Zoom because they're kind of logging in other areas, coming in person to some of these other classes. That could be an explanation. And other than that, things are going pretty well. So we want to start out by sharing, maybe Scott, you could kind of go over for the newer people, the Eugene plant-based providers, and then we can have Dr. Colgrove say hello, and if there are any other, I don't see any other providers tonight other than Dr. Blake, who is not a Eugene plant-based provider, but boy, she is becoming smart over the last year.
I had a success.
Ha
I
ha!
had a success. I was shocked and amazed. But yes, yes.
All right,
So
well, you got to tell us about that. I mean, we have time.
so I have a patient and I think like both her parents had colon cancer. They were like from Chicago and they were like I think she's Armenian. They had a lot of like smoked sausages and stuff. And she has had polyps and polyps and polyps, like, colonoscopy every 3 to 5 years, always a polyp. And last year I said, well, there's a lot of evidence for plant-based vegan diet as a prevention. And I talked about Michael Greger and all this stuff. Anyway, she comes back, she's become a vegan. She did have another colonoscopy, which did show another polyp. And she was like, I've been doing this vegan diet for a year. I said, well, that polyp might have been there already and it might have, not grown as fast, like, that because it's been like 3 to 5 years since her last colonoscopy. So that polyp could have already been there. Maybe it didn't grow as big. But anyway, so yeah, she's on the vegan train and the Michael Greger train. And yeah, so
Nothing like success to kind of get you a little inspired, huh?
yeah.
Well,
So
congratulations.
yeah, well, and it's
Well,
good for her too. I think it'll reduce her risk. And yeah, so
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want care to add or share?
I got something to say.
Okay, Ed.
Well, my
Yeah,
wife
sure.
works at Joanne's. They're going to be closing soon, but she talks to a lot of people, like as a cashier. And it's amazing how frequently this subject comes up with the people she talks to. And so she was saying that it would be nice or cool or convenient if there was some sort of like card or a flyer that she'd just give people.
There definitely is a flyer and there are definitely cards is this Joanne's in Springfield or Joanne's in
Springfield.
Eugene?
In Springfield.
And so she's talking to people about their food choices.
Yeah, I don't know how it comes up, how she talks about the things she does, but she talks to a lot of people. And the subject of diet and nutrition comes up a lot.
So maybe I could drop by a flyer at your place. Tomorrow I'm going to be in Springfield, and then maybe you could pass it on to her when you see her.
Okay.
I just need to remember what your address is. I'll look through my stuff. If I can't find it, I'll send you an email.
All right. Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. Thank you, Edward. How else can we get some more people involved? Anybody? Okay. Well, that's an ongoing topic which we'll keep exploring. We keep knocking on doors and talking with people, and we'll just keep spreading the word, bottom line. Eugene plant-based providers. Scott, you want to kind of share how that came about, and then maybe Eric can talk for a bit.
Yeah. Well, since this is an introduction class and it is being recorded, we kind of want to tell our. What?
Can you hear it? No.
I'm trying to. Is someone asking a question? Okay, Scott, I'm going to mute everybody here,
Okay.
and then we'll let you start that again. How's that? I'll mute everybody for now. You'll get a chance to ask a question in a bit. Okay.
Okay. So yeah. So since it is an introduction class, it's being recorded. We'll have people that will want to watch this and kind of see it as an introduction class. So most of you have kind of heard the story, but if there's a few new ones. So I'm Scott Wagnon. I'm a physician associate. I've been a PA for 20 years, and back in 2012, was doing a lot of exercise. I used to be a professional bicycle racer and was always really physically fit, but into my late 30s, early 40s, I was still doing a lot of long distance cycling, but I was unhealthy. I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, pre-diabetes, had heartburn, irritable bowel syndrome. Wasn't on any medications for any of these things yet, but I knew as a medical provider, we tend to see our own future in our own future health through our own patients, because you see and follow patients over time. And so I knew that I was going to end up with diabetes and be at high risk for heart disease, and I had the irritable bowel and the heartburn, and despite heavy exercise, I was having all those medical problems. And so I knew it had to be the food, because I had a healthy lifestyle otherwise, lots of exercise and good social support and stress reduction and good sleep and all the different pillars of lifestyle medicine, but didn't have the food part right. So that prompted me back in 2012 to start studying nutrition, and I eventually found lifestyle medicine. And after transitioning to a whole food plant-based diet, after a year, I dropped my cholesterol 100 points, my prediabetes went away, my irritable bowel went away, my heartburn went away. I lost 47 pounds, just became healthy. And that was despite, instead of 7,000 miles a year on my bike every year, I was doing like 2,000 miles every year on my bike. So with less exercise, I actually got healthy because I fixed the food. So that emboldened me to teach it to my patients. And I had a lot of successes getting patients off insulin, with people with diabetes off their insulin, off blood pressure medications, people that were really making significant changes even faster than I was making changes for myself. Some of my patients were making them. And then I ended up meeting Charlie probably about 2016 or so, and he was teaching classes up in Oak Ridge, and he encouraged me to start teaching classes in Springfield, which I did from 2018 through 2020. and then in person, and then pandemic hit. And so Charlie and I joined forces and started teaching classes every Tuesday over Zoom ever since April of 2020. So we're looking at 5 years now since we've been doing the online classes. And Charlie and I, and then Eric Colgrove, who's going to talk here in a minute, the three of us essentially started Eugene Plant-Based Providers, and we got more and more members, and we're now a 501c3 nonprofit. And through this nonprofit, we do these classes, the online, the in-person. We do grocery store shopping tours with dietitians in our group. We do monthly walks. We do potlucks. We do cooking demonstrations. We do movie nights. So we have all this community of activities surrounding a more whole food plant-based diet and the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which I'm board certified, and Charlie just recently got board certified. And kind of the rest is history. But I don't. You want to introduce yourself, Eric?
Yeah, sure. I'm Eric Colgrove. I'm a pediatrician, and I've been a pediatrician for 25 years. I got into whole food plant-based medicine. Excuse me, I'm on an elliptical and kind of winded. I basically got into this really starting in medical school. I was interested in nutrition, and I was kind of floored that medical school they didn't offer any nutrition education at all, and I was really upset about that. And the deans of the school said, well, you're just gonna have to figure it out on your own. And that's what I thought I was gonna do. But then I got really busy, and I met up with Scott and Charlie and heard about their classes, and it all just kind of clicked. That was like 20 years later, because I didn't do anything. So I was practicing my own pediatrics, and had teaching the wrong things about what to eat. And so it wasn't until I started taking this class that I said it all just clicked, and I became very excited about medicine again, really. And that was because I felt like I could really truly do some really good prevention, and that's what pediatrics is all about. It's really about preventing disease. So now I have this opportunity to really prevent the horrible lifestyle type diseases that we see. 80% of all the death and diseases that happen in the United States are preventable, and that's a significant number. Just to think about all the heart attacks and diabetes and strokes. These things are very much preventable. Even cancer, not 80% of cancer, but more like 60%, or maybe half of cancers. So, anyways, I have been enjoying it ever since, and I've gotten more involved. And now I teach the class on pediatrics. So I love the opportunity to get kids and families more involved with this type of lifestyle medicine, because it's all about catching them early and then preventing through early education and treatment and learning how to live, how to eat. So I've been lucky. Excited about doing that. Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah, I really appreciate everyone coming today.
Okay, anyone else have something they wish to share before we continue on with this session? I'm gonna try to take a view of the gallery here and see if anybody has anything that they care to share. Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
I don't want to share anything, but I want to ask Dr. Colgrove if there was one book that you would recommend a new mom, what would it be for the plant-based lifestyle change or start?
You want to unmute, Eric? little more unmute. Still can't.
No,
There
no,
you go.
it wouldn't let me. Something's changed my phone, and I have to do something special on my apps. So, anyways, yeah, there's the book by oh, Scott, what is the book? It's
You like Nourish?
yeah,
by
Nourish. That's the one. Yeah,
by,
that's the one.
by Dr. Shaw and
Yeah,
Brenda Davis.
yeah. So I'd go with Nourish. Probably the one that I would do.
Thank you.
Yep. Mhm.
Anybody else have anything care to add? Okay, well, we're up to 22 people. We started with what, 13 or 14? So we're doing pretty good. I guess part of the issue with Zoom is you can log in whenever you want, which is convenient and nice, and that's good. So I want to kind of share my story with you. Most of you have heard this before, so I'll try to give you the condensed version. The bottom line here for me is I didn't want to do this. I was watching a special by Sanjay Gupta with my wife a little over 13 years ago. And during that time, I'm just trying to change the screen here a little bit so you can kind of see me talk. Okay. So during that time, I thought I knew what healthy eating was and healthy exercise and healthy lifestyle, but I was wrong. And Sanjay Gupta did this special. He reviewed in this book. It's called The Last. Uh, he did the special, which was The Last Heart Attack, but it's documented in this book, How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. It's a study at the Cleveland Clinic by Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. And at the Cleveland Clinic study, they took end-stage heart patients, patients who kept having one heart attack or bypass or stent after another. They were on the maximum medical therapy, and 5 of them were told, you better get your affairs in order. You're probably not going to live the year out. Dr. Esselstyn put these patients on a whole food plant-based diet. And what that consisted of, in my understanding, was you don't eat anything that has a mother, you don't eat anything that has a face, you don't eat processed foods, and you stay away from foods that are high in fat, even if they're plant foods like avocados and olives, and especially kind of avoid the oils like olive oil and avocado oil, which you think is so healthy. So my wife looked over me after we listened to this program, because in the program they explained that when patients went on this program, they not only lived another 5 years, but 10 years and even past 20 years. And they had no further heart attacks, bypasses, or stents, except for one guy. One guy, after 6 years, said to himself, and I guess to the group, I feel so good, I'm going to go back and eat how I used to eat. And he wound up with another bypass. He fortunately lived, and he went back on Esselstyn's program and lived past the 20 years. That sounded pretty impressive. My wife looked over at me and said, Charlie, do you think we should do this? And my response was, no way. I do not want to do this. And the reason I didn't want to do it is because I loved what I was eating. I was 63 years of age. I loved my French fries. I loved my fried chicken. I even liked burgers, and I loved ice cream. I had to have a couple tablespoons every night before I went to bed, either Rocky Road or some other kind of treat. That still makes my mouth water, but there's a word that comes into my brain now, and it's poison when I think about that. But bottom line is, I did not want to change what I was doing. I thought to myself, what is the sense in living if you can't enjoy what you're eating? And so that was a mantra that I was listening to from one shoulder, but the other shoulder had a little voice which said, Charlie, you know, your wife's dad died of his first heart attack in his early 40s. And your wife's mom and brother, they both have had their chest cracked and bypassed their heart for heart disease. And your wife is as old as they were, and she's next in line. So your choice is, do you want to get a new wife, or do you want to keep eating like you're eating? And I decided I could compromise. For 1 month, I could choose to eat as Dr. Esselstyn promoted. And if it was working, my wife could keep doing it. And I would go back and eat how I wanted to eat. I was very skeptical. I did not believe this would make any difference in my life. I barely believed it might make a difference in my wife's, but I thought, what the heck? It's a study. And there was another study by Dean Ornish, which showed a similar kind of effect, which I didn't pay much attention to several years before. Again, I thought that was for everyone else but me or my patients. So needless to say, I told my wife, okay, let's do it. And we both read this book. It's 100 pages and half the book is recipes. So it was a quick read, a couple few hours. Then we listened to this movie. It's called Forks Over Knives. We watched that. And the very next day, we packed up all of our meat, dairy, eggs, and processed foods. We put it in packages and we gave it to our kids. They thought it was Christmas time because we were stacked up like for a nuclear war. We had a lot of beef, we had a lot of chicken, we had a lot of cheese, and a lot of other processed things. And the kids were thrilled. We didn't realize we were giving them poison at the time. I don't feel too good about that at this point, but that's what we did. And then my wife went online and bought 15 different kinds of beans and lentils and a similar kind of thing, almost 10 different kinds of rice for variety. We went to the store and we got greens I'd never heard of, arugula. I'd known about spinach and broccoli, but collard greens and chard, kale. I never ate any of that stuff before we went on this journey together. And so we filled our refrigerator up with all these different kinds of greens, and then we filled our countertops up with fruit. I love fruit, and that was kind of the fun part for me initially. And so for the first month, we were just eating plants, no animal products and no processed foods. And I worked in an emergency department at the time, and I used to pull out my tongue blade and take a nibble of a donut or a piece of cake or cookie or brownie. Even if I'd just eaten a big dinner, I was always hungry, never satisfied. I could always eat something sweet. But for this month, when people would approach me, do you want a brownie, Dr. Ross? I say, no, I'm kind of doing something for my wife's sake. I kind of let it alone. And I never was hungry this first whole month. And I was feeling full all day long because plant foods have a lower calorie density, and I was eating a whole lot more than what I was used to. So feeling full, my weight came down 10 pounds without any additional exercise. But what made me jump up and down, like, wow, I am really happy, was my cholesterol. It went from 240 as a baseline down to 148 in 30 days on just eating whole plant foods. And then several months later, went down to 135. So I had tried different statins, which lowered my cholesterol from 240 to like 212, but gave me diarrhea so bad I had to change my clothes at work sometimes. And so I tried 3 different ones and I said, I'm not going to take that. Then I tried niacin and it burned my head so bad. I swore I'd rather die than take another dose of that. And so I didn't really realize that those medicines are just treating pretty much symptoms. They're not really treating the root cause of why I had the high cholesterol. And so I changed my food. I saw my cholesterol go down. I saw my weight get down to its ideal body, 35 pounds less. And I never have turned back. It's been 13 years, over 13 years now. I love what I'm eating. Over this time, I haven't really touched an animal product. Occasionally might have something with a little bit of oil in it from, some treat that someone does at a potluck, or maybe my wife makes a muffin that she puts some oil in to keep it from sticking and rubs the oil out with a paper towel. So it's very, very minimal. And for 2 years, solid years, we followed Dr. Esselstyn's program to the letter pretty much. And then after a couple of years, we thought, okay, our arteries are probably cleaned out. Now we're going to kind of go back, drift back to a less stringent form. And so we incorporated some avocado, a quarter cup of nuts into our life, and occasionally have some olives, which he tends to restrict. But during this process, we really did increase the fruit and vegetable intake in our life very, very significantly. And now it's been over 13 years, and my wife is 75 years of age, and she has no evidence of heart disease. I'm 76, and I don't take any pills for any chronic illnesses. And I'm thrilled. I'm very fortunate that Sanjay Gupta changed my life, and I'm fortunate that my wife asked me that question. We walk every day, 3 miles together now. We make breakfast together, spend about 20 minutes to a half hour chopping and conversing, and then we eat over the next half hour. It's just become part of our life. It's not a pain. It's something we enjoy doing, but most of all, we enjoy this place called health. Having, found a journey to a place called health is so important. And I hear patients or class people tell me all the time, I just can't see myself giving up meat or giving up dairy or this or that. And when they're expressing themselves in that way, I understand they really find enjoyment with that. They find comfort in certain foods. And yet at the same time, once they experience the joy and the comfort level of actually attaining health without having to depend on pills, that becomes motivation in itself, and that's become my motivation. But I do this for another reason. I'm here talking before you because of these things, and I think you can kind of see what they are. They're cards, they're letters, and they are emails, lots of emails. And these have been coming in over the last 13 years since I've been teaching free community classes. I started in Roseburg, and Roseburg has become a blue zone project because those classes were started there. The blue zone people liked the fact that that Roseburg was addressing the issue of food and how important it was to health. And we're hoping that the same thing could happen in the Eugene Springfield area. And we'll continue to pursue that. And these people who sent cards and letters, thank you notes, what they were expressing is thank you. I don't have to take my diabetic medicine anymore, or I'm off of insulin, or I don't have to take high blood pressure medicine anymore. I've cut back my medicines in half, or my anxiety or depression has improved. My pain has improved. And the people who told me that their erectile dysfunction, there's 3 of them, that their partner's erectile dysfunction cleared, they were especially happy. Thank you notes. So there's a lot of reasons why you might choose to make a change in your dietary choices. But as I say that, I think, there's a lot of confusion in this world. One month you hear one thing, another month another. The internet, it's so confusing. Is milk good for you, or is milk not good for you? Should you be using coconut milk or not using coconut milk? Who do you trust? And it took some time to develop a trust level for sources. My first trusted source was Colin Campbell and the China study. And then I found from a medical student, Michael Greger, nutritionfacts.org. And he is such a wonderful evidence-based site, and it's a transparent site. So he's not selling you some special Gregor formula to get the best health in your life. He's sharing evidence-based studies from peer-reviewed journals, and he gives you the journal links so you can read about this for yourself. And so I've come to trust Michael Greger. And then in the process, Michael Greger and Dr. Neil Barnard and Caldwell Esselstyn and Dean Ornish and John McDougall and Michael Clapper, there is a whole list of people who are saying the same thing. And they look healthy, these people. And, it's like, I want to follow them. I don't want to follow the people who are not looking healthy, who, even though they've written a bestseller book like The Zone or like Grain Brain or Wheat Belly or the carnivore diet. Sounds really great, and celebrities promote these unscientific diets, and they lead to people getting frustrated and not being able to achieve the goals that they want. So our goal is to share the science with you. And so now that we're on the science, I want to kind of stop this for a moment, stop the share, and I want to come back to a view of the room because I kind of like to see who's in the room, see that you're all still alive and breathing. By the way, we watched the movie Last Breath with our grandkids last night. It kept us on the edge of our seat the whole time. It's quite an amazing story, and I'd highly recommend it for those of you who haven't seen it. Getting off topic for a moment, I want to get back on topic. Thinking about the science, what is our fuel? You all know what fuel you're going to put in your car, whether it's diesel, whether it's regular, whether it's premium gasoline. If you put diesel in a gasoline engine, it doesn't work the same as if you use the appropriate fuel. And I just want to leave you with the idea tonight that if you've been putting in a fuel that's not appropriate for your body, it can lead to chronic illness, chronic pain, and just a less happy life, a less healthy life. And so, what is the fuel that's appropriate for your body? Dr. John McDougall has done a really good lecture on what is food, or what is a human's food. I can't remember the title of it, but he has a really good lecture on it. I've listened to it a number of times, but I've kind of condensed that down into look at your teeth and bite down. Are your teeth more like an elephant or a gorilla or a giraffe, or are they more like a lion and a tiger and your cat? Now, your cat, the lion, and tiger have these long incisors that are used for ripping and tearing apart an animal. Whereas the teeth we have these molars. And what do the elephants, giraffes, and gorillas eat? They eat plants. So that's the first clue that I really, Dr. Neil Barnard is the one who I hear over and over again telling me about your teeth, is to think about that as the first reason why you may want to be incorporating plants in your diet. And then comes the length of your intestinal tract. If you take your intestine and you lay it out across the room, it's long, it's over 30 feet long. Whereas if you look at meat eaters, meat-eating mammals, they have short intestines. those intestines, they're absorbing the food high up and in a very short time in your intestine. Whereas those mammals, such as ourselves, that our fuel source, our real food is plants, we have long intestinal tracts. And these long intestinal tracts have some unique cells in them. They're called L cells. These L cells are found way down in the intestine, in the small intestine, in the place called the ileum. These L cells, when they're exposed to fat, carbohydrate, and protein, they release a chemical, a protein peptide chemical, which is a hormone, GLP-1. GLP-1 may sound familiar to you. You see it on the TV every single night. Ozempic and Wegovy and the other weight loss medicines that are currently in such demand. You can produce your own GLP-1. I didn't realize this until a couple months ago when I was studying to do a talk on these drugs, which I didn't know much about. But in studying about this, I learned that our own body will make that. But they'll only make it if your food source is absorbed way down in your lower intestine. If your foods are absorbed high up in your intestine, you are not going to produce your own GLP-1. This GLP-1 is a hormone that stimulates your vagus nerve in the GI tract, sends impulses back up to your brain and says, I've had enough to eat. I'm full. Stop eating. It also slows your digestion down. So if you want to gain, if you want to stop being hungry all the time, and you want to get down to an ideal body weight, and you want to cut down the inflammation in your body, you're going to want more of this GLP-1. But you don't necessarily want it from the shots that are $1,000 a month. You want to produce your own. That doesn't cost you anything. In fact, saves you money because you're buying foods which are broken down and absorbed lower in the GI tract. So let's talk about where your foods are absorbed when you're eating meat, dairy, and eggs. Each of those foods have cell wall or cell membranes. The cell membranes are kind of thin and flimsy, easily broken down by hydrochloric acid in your stomach and by the pancreatic juices high up in your intestine. So any animal product that you eat is going to be broken down and absorbed high up in your intestinal tract. It's not going to reach the L cells down low. You are not going to be producing GLP-1. That hormone that's going to get you healthy. If you knew this when you were a kid or your parents knew it, you would be eating different foods right now than what you had been traditionally choosing. Now let's take other foods. Let's take plant foods. Plant foods have cell walls around them. The cell wall does not easily get broken down. That fiber doesn't get broken down easily by the hydrochloric acid and the other pancreatic enzymes. It needs the bacteria low down in your intestinal tract to ferment them and break those cell walls down. And then the food gets released. Guess what? Gets released low down in your intestine. And now you're stimulating your own production of this GLP-1. Feeling satisfied, cutting down on inflammation. You're getting healthier by eating whole plant foods. Now, let's say you take the whole plant food and you process the heck out of it. You put it in a chopper and you chop the oats into oat flour. You chop the wheat into wheat flour. Where does that get digested, do you think? Absorbed. high up. Any oil gets absorbed high up. So those sorts of foods, you don't want to be eating very much of that. You want to be eating foods that are going to not be absorbed until low down in your digestive tract. So that's what we're going to keep teaching you about, the foods that will be your healthiest choices. Now, it's your option to eat whatever you choose to eat. If you're otherwise healthy, you may want to eat like the blue zone people. They're eating about 95% plant-based, and they're eating a few animal products, maybe a little fish, maybe some eggs or yogurt or something like that in various areas throughout the world. But they've been doing this from the time they're little kids. They haven't developed the buildup of plaque in the arteries that we have in the United States and in the industrialized countries that are basically meat sweet diets. At the age of 10, for the kids who get killed in car accidents, when they get autopsied, they have the beginnings of this plaque cholesterol buildup in their arteries. So heart disease starts at a young age in our culture. So if you at age 50 or 60 or 70 say to us, well, can I do this 90, 95%? If you don't have any health problems, you probably can. But if you have some health problems, some diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol elevations, whatever it might be, you may want to do this 100% for a few years, like Esselstyn, clean your arteries out, and then maybe transition back a bit to your diet. But it's totally up to you. If you come to me and you say, I'm having chest pain, the doctor tells me I should have an angiogram, and I don't want to do it, I tell you, you do this 100% if you want your best chance of overcoming this, because you have 1 foot on a banana peel and 1 foot in the grave. You don't want to be playing around with doing this part way. But if you're otherwise healthy, you do it however you want to do it. Are there any questions to this point about what your fuel might be and why plants, whole plant foods as grown in nature, are so important to your life? I know you like other foods. They're really high in calorie density. They are high in fat, and some of the processed foods are high in salt and sugar. That lights up your brain, but they are not your healthiest choices. Anybody have a question about a health food? If you're going to ask me about bread, what am I going to tell you? Does it grow on a tree? Can you pull it out of the ground? Or can you harvest it from the field? And if your answer is no, then I would encourage you to stay with as much of the whole plant foods as you possibly can. Doesn't mean you
I
can't
think
eat
you're
bread.
absolutely right. I think whole food, plant-based. I think of my mother. She had Alzheimer's, had no life. Her eyes were empty. Her husband had arteriosclerosis. My other grandmother, she had no life. I mean, she lived in a nursing home, nothing. I'm 78. They died at 71. You know, this is, to me, I just think of the past, and it isn't good. Whole food, plant-based is the way to go. That's it.
How long have you been doing whole food plant-based, Marcia?
Since about 2017. I got Neil Bernard's book, Beginning Whole Foods.
Okay. Well,
That's how I started.
congratulations to you.
Yeah, I mean, my husband, he had bloody stools. He had a pancreatitis attack. And I said, okay, next time you go to the hospital, you got to take yourself, because I'm not going to take you. I'm not going to sit in the hospital and do all that stuff that they put you through. But, you know, and he said, if you don't eat like me, it's your problem. So he's eating like me. Ha! Well, most of the time.
Congratulations with that. Okay. Thank you very much, Marcia. Karen, you got your hand raised.
Hi, yes. I was curious about the servings on the Esselstyn diet. Can you eat less servings, or is there a reason for eating, as many as he suggests?
So Dr. Greger has the servings, and I don't recall the exact servings that Esselstyn recommended.
Oh, okay.
I use the servings that Greger recommended, except I cut out the nuts. Um,
Okay.
Well,
and go ahead, Scott.
yeah. Well, the big thing with Esselstyn is the fist-size serving of greens 6 times a day because he's trying to flood those plaques in the arteries with nitric oxide as often as possible. That was kind of his big thing, was the fist-size serving of greens steamed with a little balsamic vinegar 6 times a day to keep so you can reverse that heart disease. And then but yeah, as far as the servings of all the other things, not that you would go to Dr. Greger for the amounts of all the other foods.
And I personally, or my wife and I, we didn't do 6 servings of greens a day. We actually, but we did do ultimately, we started out with 1 leaf of romaine lettuce, and then we went to a leaf of kale, and then we went to a leaf of kale with another leaf of collard green, and then we kept building up for there to where we, over a couple year period of time, we got up to like about 4 handfuls of dark green leafy. So about 4 full cups of dark green leafies. And he would prefer 6, but we didn't have end stage heart disease at that point.
I hope I don't either.
Okay. Yeah. So since you have not had a heart attack or stroke, if your cholesterol level's a bit high, then I would just go with the as much of the dark green leafies, like 3 or 4 handfuls a day of broccoli and spinach, and make them different. A variety is helpful.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have a question that we can answer before we continue on? Because we have a few more things to talk about.
I thought of one more. What about shredded coconut?
Shredded coconut. Coconut has a lot of saturated fat.
Yeah.
So
That's what I
that's the
thought.
one fruit that you really need to be careful about, along with avocado has a high quantity of fat in it. So
Okay. Thank you.
leave the coconut off for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, Helena.
Yes, my question, if you mean greens, you mean just greens like spinach with 4 or 6 cups, or you can mix greens, all kind of greens. It means like beans, Brussels sprouts, or asparagus, or other stuff. It also count like a greens, or it is some separate kind of stuff.
So the dark green leafies he talks about, as I recall, there is some cruciferous that you should have every day, which when you look up cruciferous, you find arugula and bok choy and
Yeah.
broccoli and Brussels sprouts, cabbage and cauliflower. They're not actually dark green leafies, but they're in the category. Collard greens, horseradish, kohlrabi, mustard greens, radish, turnip greens, and watercress. That's for the cruciferous. And then the other greens, beet greens, and the things we've already mentioned, along with spinach and Swiss chard and turnip greens. Asparagus is not necessarily mentioned. Green beans are not part of it. So for us, we do arugula and spinach and broccoli and collard greens and kale and chard. Those are our go-to. And then occasionally some dandelion greens when they're in
Yeah.
season, and maybe some beet greens, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? There's a whole variety out there of foods which are actually kind of fun to eat. At first, they may be a little bitter, at first you say, oh, I don't know if I like this so well. And then you read the science and you say, well, I'll try it again. I'll hide it in a soup for a few times. I'll throw it into a salad to kind of get my taste buds used to it. And by the time 10 or 15 times goes by that you've introduced yourself to a new green, pretty soon you're like, I like that. Where is it? And so then you're winding up buying every green known to mankind. I joke with the people at the grocery stores when they when we're getting rung up two packages or two bunches of kale, two of collard greens, two of chard, and then there's a bunch of broccoli, and then there's a spinach and an arugula, and I joke at them. I say, well, we try to buy every green known to mankind when we come shopping, and they say, yeah, we see that.
Yeah.
What's this? Jicama? What do you do with that? They say. And we encourage them, hey, you could come to some free classes and learn about this. Anyway, I have fun when I go to the grocery store. All right. I'm going to go back and I'm going to share a little PowerPoint with you next. God, I'm having way too much fun with you all. I have a habit of doing that, which is fun for sure.
I have a question.
Okay, Alice, go for it.
Are you buying organic? What are you doing with the organic versus conventional?
Okay, so I'm generally buying organic. When my granddaughters were here, we were buying nothing but organic. I'm 76 and my wife's 75, and I'm thinking, at this stage, probably doesn't make as big a difference. So I'll sometimes buy broccoli that's not organic. I try to do potatoes and apples that are organic, strawberries organic. There's a dirty dozen, and I try to buy organic for the dirty dozen items. I don't buy organic for oranges or bananas or I mean, if they happen to be about the same price, depending on how green the bananas are, I'll buy whatever I like the ripeness. So I think Gregor gave a lecture down in Roseburg, and he said something like this, if I recall it correctly. He said, if everybody in the world ate one serving of conventional fruit a day more, that 20,000 cancers would be prevented. That's around the world. But if you ate organic, another 100 or so, or maybe 200 deaths would be prevented. So the benefits of just eating the fruit or veggie so far outweigh that eating organic is healthier, but it's not so much healthier that you shouldn't eat it. Got it? Okay. All right. Let me go back to the multi-speaker, and I'm going to go back to the share. And let's see. Oh, I didn't share sound. I don't need to share sound, I don't think. But I'm sharing here. And let's see. That's a thing trending. Okay. I need to get to, where am I getting my thing? If I'm sharing, why isn't that sharing? Share here. All right, let's go here. You can see this PowerPoint, yes? I hope.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Scott. We're going to go from the beginning. I'm going to kind of run through this because I don't want to bore you. I told you my story. Here's my wife, the love of my life. And I'm thrilled that she's still around and has no evidence of heart disease. So we can keep walking every day together. I hear a little sound in the background. So if someone has their mic on, if you could kind of mute that, it would save me from closing mine down. Remember, in our classes that Scott and I and the rest of the plant-based providers, Eric and the other group of people are going to be talking about, are what we eat, how we move, the chemicals we choose, how we deal with stress, sleep, and our social connections. Really important to determine whether we're healthy or ill. Many of you may not realize that in 2017, That's been how many years? Almost 8 years ago, the AMA passed a resolution co-sponsored by the American College of Cardiology that U.S. hospitals, to improve the health of patients, staff, and visitors, should be providing plant-based meals and meals that are low in fat, sodium, and added sugars, eliminating processed meats from the menus, and providing and promoting healthful beverages. Healthful beverages are not soda, which you see in most every hospital. They are not the bacon and the sausage that is still being served in the hospital cafeterias. So we still have a long way to go, but we're on the move in that direction. And there are a lot of organizations and a lot of countries that all recommend a more plant-based diet for human health and for our environmental sustainability. So the problem is we live 4 years less than the nearest industrialized country to us, but we spend twice as much. This is kind of an old chart. It's been around for, I don't know, 13, 15 years. And it's not any better. We still spend twice as much, and we still are not living as long. 7 to 8 out of 10 people with chronic illnesses might not experience them. And you can see if you're one of the people who have one of these chronic illnesses or you have a family member, you may want to really consider altering what your food choices are. And what's happened to our food choices? They have been altered. Since 1900, in 1900, the average American used to eat 5 pounds of sugar per year. In 2010, the average American was eating 77 pounds of sugar per year. This year, we're averaging closer to 100 pounds of sugar per year, pounds of sugar per person per year. Look at the oils and fats have gone from 4 pounds to 74. The cheese from 2 pounds to 30. It's no wonder when you add up the difference from what we used to eat to what we're eating now, why we have such a problem with overweight. But I want to take you back to the L cells and GLP-1. The reason we're overweight is because our food has been processed, it's transitioned to an animal-based kind of food sources, and it's absorbed up high, not stimulating our natural mechanism to shut off our desire to eat more. And that brings us to the issue of fiber. I used to tell people it's fiber that is our deficiency. And in that, it really, in essence, is true. The average American today is eating 14 to 15 grams of sugar or of fiber per day. Our country recommends 25 to 35 grams per day. But in the 1900s, we used to eat 60, 80, and 100 grams of fiber per day. And when you look around the world, the countries that are actually healthy don't have diabetes and heart trouble and the chronic illnesses. They're eating 60, 80, and 100 grams of fiber a day. So how much fiber do you think I'm eating a day? I'm eating 60 to 70 grams. And how am I getting it? I'll show you in a moment. But first, I know the question you have in your mind is, how do you get enough protein from plants? Because when I tell you, I mention the word protein, you think of animal as the first thing that comes to your mind. An animal like a cow or a pig or a chicken. That's how you perceive protein. Maybe in an egg, maybe in cheese. And I don't look at it that way anymore, because when I looked at this chart, which shows the nutrients in equal parts of tomatoes, spinach, lima beans, peas, and potatoes, that's 500 calories of these, compared with 500 calories of equal parts of beef, pork, chicken, and whole milk, we find that you get a whole bunch more of fat in your diet with animal products, but the protein content is very similar. I don't know, you can calculate this in slightly different ways, and I've calculated sometimes down to 28 on the plant and up to 34 on the animal, but sometimes you can get a little less on the animal. Depends on what chart you use. and how you adjust this. But the bottom line, it's very, very similar. The amount of protein that you get from 500 calories of plants is very similar to the amount that you get in animal products. Now, animal products fit in the palm of your hand, so you don't have much bulk. And so it doesn't fill you up. So you can eat a lot of 500 calorie portions. You could eat maybe 6 portions a day and get 3,000 calories and still not feel full. But if you're eating 500 calories a plant, you're eating like a small volleyball of food. You're like, oh man, I'm filled up. I can't eat more than maybe 2 or 3 of these for the day. 2 is probably even enough. That's 1,200 to 1,500 calories for the day, and you're feeling pretty full. But look at the other nutrients, the beta carotene, the vitamin C, folate, vitamin E, iron, magnesium, calcium, so far outweigh what you get from animal products. The plants win out by a long way. And look at the fiber issue. You're getting 30 grams of fiber for 500 calories of plant foods versus 0 fiber in any animal fiber or any animal food. So if you ate 1,000 calories a day, you'd be getting 60 grams of fiber. And that's about what I'm getting. I eat about 1,200 to 1,500 calories. So I'm getting 60 to 70 grams of fiber, plus or minus, it depends. I used to be the standard American doctor. It was sad. I used to eat the SAD diet, and I have stopped that because of the side effects. And I was at Valley River and I noticed this sign a few years ago. It said toxic wings, burgers, and fries. It was around Halloween. I thought it was a joke. And then I walked around the mall and sure enough, there was a real business. And it's toxic wings, burgers, and fries. And my dad used to say, the truth is often said in jest. Well, these wings, burgers, and fries are definitely toxic, and I would avoid them at all costs. We have other things to talk about, but I wanted to share this. This is the reason I'm standing here, because I didn't want this to happen to my wife or to me. This comes out of the book, How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, that I showed you in the beginning. Shows a clogged coronary artery, and 1 to 3 years later, with just food, no stent, no bypass, no roto-rooter, just food, how it's opened up, looking good, and the patient is feeling wonderful. And I'd want the same for you. Only 2 studies in the world literature demonstrate this. Reversal of unclogging of the coronary arteries by angiographic analysis, squirting dye into the coronary arteries. No other study, no keto, grain bane, wheat belly, South Beach, paleo, no other way of eating has ever been demonstrated to show this kind of reversal. So why shouldn't we be eating this way? If we look at the blue zone people, there are 5 regions throughout the world that are blue zones, and they have things in common. They have good family support, no smoking, plant-based diets, 90-95%, constant moderate physical activity, social engagement, and they eat legumes. So you might take this to heart and say, maybe I want to be eating like the people who live into their hundreds. And are out mowing their lawns and healthy and just die in their sleep and don't die of chronic illness for the last 10 years. Now, I don't like to fight, but I sure wouldn't mind having a body like either one of these guys, and all they eat is plants. Carl Lewis was vegan. The Williams sisters and Djokovic in tennis. Football players, the Tennessee Titans won a title when their team pretty much converted to a more like vegetarian or vegan type lifestyle. And then these guys, they look kind of anorexic, but these are ultra marathoners. They have no body fat, so they look a little weird. But let me tell you, this guy here, Scott Jurek, he holds the world record in running in 24 hours. He ran not one marathon, that's 26.2 miles. He ran 167 miles in a 24-hour period, and all he eats is plants. Do you think he gets enough protein? The answer is yes. There are some toxins associated with meat that when you learn about them, you say to yourself, do I really want to heat the meat? Because I'm producing heterocyclic amines and those are carcinogenic. And why am I doing this? I'm doing this because of tradition, but the toxins associated with meat that Dr. Clapper talks about, it's really eye-opening and might make it easier for you to say, maybe I'll leave that on the side. That includes chicken. Low carb has problems, decreased blood flow after 1 year on a low carb diet compared to increased blood flow on a plant-based diet and a shorter life expectancy with the keto low carb diets. For the world, it's healthier. A lot of people don't realize that the water resources that are used to use animals for our food source. We use a lot of free water. Eating meat contributes more to global warming than all the transportation we use. And there are so many reasons why we should if we're not doing this for our individual health, we should consider doing this for the planet. And by the way, the animals wouldn't mind us not putting them in concentration camps. With that, I'm done. And we're going to open this up for a little discussion to see what questions you have and see if anybody has any other input. I've carried on way too long, but it's been fun for me, and thanks for hanging in there. Any questions? Helena.
Okay. I have question, but not regarding meat.
Okay.
My question regarding alcohol. Occasional use of alcohol. Why alcohol is banned completely? It means that vanilla cannot contain some alcohol or something that you cannot consume on plant meat diet.
Scott, do you want to talk about alcohol for a little bit?
Yeah, well, it's just considered a carcinogen, and we've had studies over many years that showing this association. But just as time's gone on, the studies have become more and more strong that any alcohol consumption increases your risk for many types of cancers. We've known about breast cancer and alcohol link for a long time, but now there's been enough accumulation of enough studies that actually they're considering putting a warning label on all alcoholic beverages, just like there's a warning on cigarettes. They're going to say, any alcoholic beverage increases your risk for cancer. So, and it's if you're trying to lose weight, it's 7 calories per gram. So fat's 9 calories per gram, alcohol is 7 calories per gram, carbohydrate and proteins 4 calories per gram. So if your alcoholic beverages are a lot of calories, so and they often a lot of times contain sugar and things like that as well. So, but so it is not a health food, but so if you're not drinking, don't start. But if a lot of people would say, well, if you occasionally have a glass of wine or something and you seem to be pretty healthy, and maybe it's okay, but as more and more evidence accumulates, it's probably best to avoid it.
Thank you.
Again, we're not policemen. We're not going to give you a ticket. You get to choose what you eat. Leslie S., I think you had your hand up for a moment. Maybe the question's answered.
Yeah,
and then Karen, then Sarah.
thank you for this talk tonight. It's really motivating and helpful. I've watched a lot of Dr. Greger's videos, and he sometimes talks about wrapping your calories, and I don't really know what that means or how you actually practically do that. Can you talk about that just briefly?
What did you say? Wrapping?
Yeah, wrapping your calories is an expression he's used.
I need to look that up because Scott, do you recall?
Not that particular term, just I guess the one I
I
heard her
think
talk
it's under
about
the 21 tweaks.
just means
And
like eating food as whole, as particles. Like if you chew nuts, for example, you're getting the pieces of the food and it's going down your digestive tract, as opposed to say peanut butter, which is all mashed up. And then so the particles, it's still got its whole content, and so you're not getting all 100% of the calories from the food if you're eating it and chewing it up from its whole state. But I don't know if that's what he meant by that particular term.
Okay, thank you.
So if you download his app, if your goal is to lose weight, he has 21 tweaks on the Daily Dozen app. And among them, I guess what I would go for, one of the first one is the time restricted eating, where if you wake up at 7 o'clock, you restrict your time to don't eat after 7 o'clock at night. Don't be eating like when you first wake up and then throughout the day and then just before you go to bed, because that keeps your body geared up to store fat and it makes it harder to lose weight. Try to keep your overall eating between an 8 and a 12-hour window of time, whenever that window of time is. It could be 10 o'clock in the morning till 10 at night, I guess. But try to keep to a circadian kind of rhythm of 12 hours.
I did do a Google search. It just says Dr. Greger's concept of wrapping your calories focuses on prioritizing the quality and density of your food choices over simply reducing calorie intake, emphasizing whole plant foods to achieve sustainable weight loss and improved health. So kind of like, so instead of just, because like a calorie, I remember him saying like 100 calories worth of carrots is completely different than 100 calories of candy, right? So it's like, they're both 100 calories, but the calories that you get from carrots is going to have a totally different effect on the body and weight loss and digestion than 100 calories worth of candy, because it's, even though they're the same, so a calorie is not just a calorie. So eating whole plant foods for your calories has a different effect on the body than, so it's not just the calories in and calories out. It's basically, there's a difference based on what you're eating. And so wrapping your calories is the quality and density of your food choices, instead of just thinking about how many calories you're eating.
That
Okay,
makes sense. Thank you.
Karen.
I was curious about like vegetable bouillon. Is that like something that you can use, or do you use like the veggie broth like in packs or cans, or just make your own?
So we use like sauteing vegetables or the broth. We use a veggie broth, basically, and a low salt one. So some of the broths that you buy can be pretty high in sodium and the salt content. So, kind of compare that and get the ones that have the lower sodium content.
Yeah, the bouillon cubes tend to have a lot of salt, and so you can make your own vegetable broth or stock from leftover vegetables if you have the time and energy to do that. But otherwise, yeah, I do the same thing: vegetable broth or stock, low sodium. But I know the Better Than Bouillon and some of those, even if they're vegetarian, they tend to have a lot of salt.
And look for sales, because some of them you can spend almost $4 for a quart, and down to maybe $1.97, depending on when they're in sale. So
Okay,
there's
great.
quite a difference in them.
And for like a sweet craving, is eating like, a half a date or something like that okay?
A full date is okay. Dates are an excellent choice. And if you've got a sweet craving, a date is perfect. It's a whole
Great.
food, grows in nature. You can do grapes are sweet, sometimes blueberries, but dates are really packed with the sweet punch.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sarah, and then Kim.
Thank you. Would you consider sprouts greens?
I guess the broccoli sprouts that I grow are broccoli, so the broccoli is kind of considered greens for the sulforaphane. I don't know that it would produce the same amount of nitric oxide as the dark green that you get from the dark green leaf vegetables. You get some. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that the sprouts are definitely healthy choices, but I wouldn't give up on your handfuls of other greens.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Kim,
Well, I wanted to ask Edward what the brand was, and do you get those online, or where do you find the SOS free vegetable broth?
It's called Well Your World.
Oh yeah, so you get it online then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add to your talk, Dr. Ross, which was really comprehensive, but since I'm here, I think we need to also talk about the pleasure trap and how processed food is intentionally made to get us addicted to all the sugar, fat, and oil. So that's something that we have to be really intentional about, because it's so easy to get addicted because it's delicious. It's salty, it's fat, it's tasty, so sweet. So I think the pleasure trap is also another good book to read about this issue.
Kim has brought up an excellent point that the food manufacturing companies alter our foods by adding salt, sugar, and fat to them to make us want to buy more of their product. Now, what I've been encouraging you to do today is what? Avoid foods that are manufactured by any company.
Yeah.
Eat the foods that Mother Nature manufactures, and they don't have labels on them. You may not know how to read a label, but you may not need to know how to read a label if you're sticking with foods that's grown in nature, because fruit and vegetables, they don't have labels on them generally. And the beans, on the canned beans, they oftentimes do have labels, but you generally, if you're just buying the beans, and you're not adding ham hocks or other oils and fats in them, you got to be careful about that. So just buy the beans and you're going to be fine. And then the whole grains, if you're using 5-minute cooking oats, or you're doing steel cut oats, or you're doing oat groats or buckwheat or brown rice or quinoa, they don't necessarily have to have a label on them. And so those are really healthy choices. But when you start wandering into, you're pulling the package apart, you got to be careful about that, because people are adding things to make you buy more of that product. Could be an artificial sweetener, could be an artificial coloring or flavoring. Those are not necessarily healthy choices. But that's a really good point that you make, Kim. Most of us have been used to eating foods that the food companies have made for us, and to transition into eating foods that are not processed in that way, it's a bit of a trick. It takes time. Yeah, go ahead, Jerry. You've got Pacific vegetable broth is one of the broths that you could use for sauteing vegetables or for making soups.
Yeah.
It's a good choice. I think Fred Meyer has a no chicken chicken broth, which we've been using. It's a vegetable broth. Okay, who has another question here? We still
I
have.
have another question here.
Okay.
I have difficult time to find some plant-based tortilla which doesn't have oil, because most of these they have oil, or they have white flour, or they have something, or they have too much salt. I just cannot find the right type of these.
Yeah, so you make a good point. The tortilla, again, is not a food that's grown in nature. It's a processed form. They take whole wheat berries and they grind them up really fine into a flour. Then they add salt, sugar, and fat so that makes it taste good so that you'll buy more of the product. So Dr. Greger's recommendation would be, hey, how about just using a bowl? Or how about using a collard green leaf? Or some leaf of um, uh, a dark green leafy like a romaine lettuce, and use that as your shell instead of the tortilla. And you say, but I like the flour. Well, I get that. You like the flour because you're used to it. It may be a comfort food. You may have had it because your grandmother made it and you love it. But then you say to yourself, is this going to really help me reach the goal that I'm choosing? Or would my goal be reached easier if I just bring out a bowl, a glass bowl, and I put beans in it and rice in it and salsa and a couple handfuls of greens, and then I eat fruit on the side? Could I eat it that way? Like I'm going to the Yum restaurant without the Yum sauce. It's a healthy way to eat. You could even put a potato in there in that bowl. And if you don't like the bowl concept, you could do the green leaf concept. Some people choose to do that. I'm just giving you a suggestion. I'm not saying you can't buy the tortilla. You can, but you are absolutely right that they're high in fat, high in salt oftentimes, and may have some sugar added to them also. So be careful.
Yes. I try to replace it with pita bread because
With pita bread, yeah.
because this one is doesn't have so much of this unhealthy stuff.
So we kind of struggle with that issue. And so my wife has come up with a solution, and it's a cracker. And it's, oh, I can't think of the name of the cracker right now. It's a rye cracker. And it's, hold on a second. I got to ask, honey.
Maybe wasa.
There's also Mary's Gone crackers.
There
I
it
think
is.
don't have oil in them.
It's the wasa cracker.
Oh, Wasa, she got it, Sarah.
Huh?
Yeah, Sarah said, I think it's the Wasa cracker.
Okay, good. So, all right. Is there any other questions that we have going on here?
Next week's going to be meal preparation and planning. So we'll go over that. Be nice if anyone can come to the one on Friday at the Grange. We'll have some multiple presenters and I'm not sure we'll have all those presenters on the Tuesday night that we have on Friday night, but we'll see who we get to come speak for that.
Yeah, the speaker this coming Friday at the Grange is and she's coming Tuesday again.
I'm not sure. I think she is, but I'm not 100% sure.
She's a food
Debbie.
for life instructor. She's had special training and probably
No,
really
that's a different person.
Oh, is it?
No, the food for life is for the cooking demonstration later in this class series, but the meal preparation and planning is just one of our class attendees is going to share what she eats and prepares in a day.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that because I was kind of off in left field, I guess. Edward.
I feel it's worth saying for especially the new people, and myself, I need to hear this. You don't have to immediately go all or nothing on this kind of lifestyle diet. You can start by just replacing one of your go-tos with like a smarter choice, and then just keep doing that over time, and you'll eventually get there.
You're absolutely right, Edward. Each of us transitions in different ways. And if you're otherwise doing okay, you can do this like Meatless Monday, or, adding one extra fruit or vegetable to your life this week, and then next week add another one, just bit by bit. Works for a lot of people. Let's see, is there any other
All right.
hands? We're good?
It's been an
All
hour and a half.
right,
We're
thank
good.
you all for your
Thanks,
input.
everybody. Thanks for
Hope
keeping
to
us
see you next
going.
week. Yeah.
It was fun.
See y'all soon.
Okay, until the next week.
Thank you.
Scott and Eric, thanks, and all the rest of you.
Thank you. Good night.